The charge of violence against us actually stems from the guilt complex that exists in the conscious and subconscious minds of most white people in this country. They know that they've been violent in their brutality against Negroes, and they feel that someday the Negro is going to wake up.
Good to have you back. It's good to be back. What's up, man, Kanar?
What up with you? What up with you, man?
All right.
Keeping it consistent now.
Facts, man. Yeah, back at y'all again. We wanted to talk about Buffalo shooting. As you all know, I'm pretty sure everybody knows about the shooting that went down in Buffalo, New York. And, all the people that fell victim to that, 10 dead. From this white supremacist guy. It's a tragedy, obviously. We get tired of hearing that things are tragedies, Man, I was thinking about this. It's almost like this type of thing happens so much to us that we're running out of words, even in our lexicon, to even describe them adequately. It used to be a time in history where the word tragedy, it meant something and it sparked sort of an emotion, or at least it triggered some sort of understanding with people. Now it's so common, all these shootings, all the deaths, unnecessary, untimely deaths. And, our people, most of all, being victims of hate crimes, that we hear the words tragedy and shame and justice so often. It's almost like they become like the sound of, just a dripping faucet, running water, like no meaning. What you think, man?
Yeah, I totally agree. Like it's definitely a tragedy, but exactly what you said is happening so often that I think people is just kind of numb to it. Like they grow that tolerance for it. They see it. It's not something
Right.
that happens to them directly, so they kind of, they'll kind of, I guess, pay their respects, and then you just move on about your day because you don't realize
Man.
how severe and how serious that it really is.
And you know what it is, bro. It's like, for example, if you like say let's take like a fighter or a professional fighter, somebody that fights all the time, right? And the first time, right, they get in the ring and they get stolen and it hurts and they feel that pain, it's kind of shocking, I'm pretty sure, to the point where, it really means something. It's significant. Their reaction is going to be, okay, this is something different. This is not supposed to happen. But after throughout the course of their career, man, after they suffer so many blows, man, it comes a point to where they get so numb to where even if they get hit and they're dizzy, psychologically speaking, it's not the same trauma that, maybe it was the first couple times it happened. Because even though the same level of pain might be there, physiologically speaking, the same sort of response um, to protect oneself, but at the same time, it's so common that it's just not, it doesn't carry the same psychological and emotional trauma that it would have, that it did that first time. And it
Exactly.
seems like that these things are painful. They're definitely painful every time they happen. But it's like they happen so often now. It's like, okay, you killed us again. And, now what? You kill us. This is what we do. And then this is what you do. You kill us, A, B, we're going to protest. The mothers are going to cry. And then, C, you're going to send in your lawyers and your political soothsayers. Q, Al Sharpton and the violins. And then
Right.
D, the people are not guilty, or even if
Exactly.
they're guilty to such a less degree, it's like they didn't murder a human being. So it's like we're so caught up in those cycles. But just to lead into that, I know we said we was going to talk about this Buffalo shooting and how, well, in my opinion, I saw a couple of articles, people talking about it, how the Biden administration is, they're hesitant to call it a hate crime. And they are refusing to, basically, most of the articles and videos that I've seen about it, they don't like to just specifically mention that it was a Black hate crime, at least on the federal level in political vernacular. You know, so on some news stories coverage, I've seen them say, you know, this is a hate crime against Black people, etc. But I've yet to hear, and unless I'm wrong, President Biden or Kamala Harris say, you know, this is a hate crime against Black people, and we need to push a Black federal hate crimes bill through now, the way they did it with Asians. I mean, you know, am I wrong on that, man?
Nope, I haven't heard anything. I'm pretty sure that will be that will be a headline if that did happen. Just like with anything, but yeah, I haven't heard anything even close to that degree of calling this a hate crime or addressing the issue that you know, Black people do need equal protection under the law. So these things don't happen without consequence for sure.
Right. And what do you, I mean, yeah, I mean, I guess it's like if I were to ask you the question, you know, it might just be, what do they call that? A rhetorical question. If I say, why do you think that is? It's like, it's crazy that when you look at the statistics and you see what's happened, the proportional level of violence that has been perpetrated against Black people versus against Asian people, and especially in wake of the George Floyd uprisings that happened soon after George Floyd was murdered, it was like there was this uprising and the pendulum swung with a certain energy in favor of Black rights and Black protection. But it's like when all of the Black Lives Matters and the vulture organizations swooped in and sort of arrested that momentum and steered it in the direction of an all lives matters sort of thing. And then the pendulum has swung back, and it seems like there is a lot of anti-Black hate. That is the typical historical white reaction to any perceived gains for Black America. And I don't know, it would be a rhetorical question, man, but like, what do you make of that they are hesitant to, you know,
Well,
definitively do a Black hate crimes?
yeah, I could actually answer that in my opinion, of course, but it makes perfect sense that they wouldn't answer that, because especially the Democratic Party, because if you look at how the Democratic Party ran against the Republicans last election, it was all based on blaming Donald Trump for the racist tone of the nation, saying that, oh, this would have never happened under the Democratic Party. The reason that the Capitol and stuff was stormed and the reason why racist crimes went up was because the president was promoting it. So now you got the Democrat, especially this particular Democratic Party administration. Of course, they don't want to say it's a hate crime because they will have to acknowledge that the weight of what they ran off of was false, meaning that it had nothing. It had less to do with the president than they wanted to make it seem. You know, they were just kind of targeting Trump. And then also, when you look at the nation's approach towards righting the wrongs of racism throughout history, it makes sense because they want to act like, oh, it was legal. We didn't really do nothing wrong. You know, the Black people sold the slaves. You know, Black on Black crime is the reason why is more significant than police brutality. So they got all these talking points to minimize hate crimes against Black people, and they have to keep that tone up. Otherwise, it opens up the floodgates, because if you label this as a hate crime, especially in courts, they know that you can go back and start, reopening cases saying, well, what about this one? What about this one? So it's actually the longer time, the more time that goes by, actually the worse off they are with actually, having to pay black people or give reparations or put these things in the law books, because they know that when they do one, we're gonna open the books for all the ones that were not treated fairly, if that makes sense.
No, that makes perfect sense. And I would add that not just retrospectively, but preemptively. So things that they've done that should have been considered hate crimes. And like you said, when the court rules on something and it becomes sort of a judicial law, as it were, just by virtue of the court ruling on it, or them passing an actual bill at federal level, that would also apply to future, to future acts of hate against Black people, because
Right.
then, like you said, it would apply to the past hate crimes and then even to the future, which I believe that the country understands and anticipates that there's more to come, because it's ramping up, which I have an article here to segue into that. And, I'll just cite this article and just the first talking point, man, and then I'll let you go ahead and chime in. I know you've done some research on this topic, but here I've got an article. This is from the New York Times, and it's dated May 16, 2022. The title of this article, it says, Buffalo shooting highlights rise of hate crimes against Black Americans. The federal data shows a recent spike in assaults, threats, and incidents of bias. And the first highlighted portion I have here, it says, the racist slaughter at a Buffalo grocery store on Saturday is the latest episode in a troubling rise of violence against African Americans, built upon historic racial fault lines and a polarized social climate. In 2020, a year marked by the triple forces of the corona pandemic, the murder of George Floyd, and a social justice movement protesting police violence and racism, the FBI reported a surge in hate crimes targeting African Americans. So, it's here in black and white, no pun intended, but it's in black and white that the obvious surge in hate crimes is against Black Americans. Yet when we look back in recent history, we see bills passed on behalf of Asians, on behalf of LGBTQ, and whatever letters are in there. We see that when the data and the statistics show that where most of the attention should be focused is where the problem is most grievous. I mean, that's what common sense and logic would dictate. But obviously there's something at play here beyond logic, or not quite at the level of logic. It's nonsensical, but it seems like most of the efforts in terms of political impetus and resources in all their forms are directed at anyone other than what they define as Black Americans. And like I said, there's reasons for that, obviously and apparently, and that's what we're here to just talk about and try and present some possible reasons for it and ferret that out. So with that, man, did you have a first milestone you wanted to cross?
Yeah, like my take on it, just in general, especially when we talk politics, I think a lot of the publicity behind it and the way that it's talked about and on the news, it never really focused on the main issue when it comes to Black hate crimes, which is the racist factor or the hate crime factor. So because of the Biden administration's approach towards getting the Black vote, I feel like this story is being twisted. So when you see the story or you read about it, they talk about, we need more gun control, right? So they'll try to throw that in there and say, yeah, this is a hate crime, but the bigger issue is gun control. We need to get guns off the street because that's going to trigger an emotional response. Um, for the black voters to get out and vote Democrat, they're going to say, oh, we need 4 more years so we can really crack down on this gun control problem, in my opinion. And if you look at the polls, like this is just the article that I pulled up from, PBS.com, just a local news station. But it says that Joe Biden's approval rating has dipped to the lowest point of his presidency, which means, according to the polls, that only 39% of US adults approve of Joe Biden's performance as president. So when you take that into account, they're going to use all of these type of things to trigger these responses so that they can get another 4 years in office to do nothing for black people. But if you put this story in the forefront and you kind of make it an issue, then you kind of create that emotional response that'll get African American black people to vote against Republicans again, because they're still going to try to push this on a Republican issue because of gun control not strict enough, right? So what we need to do is understand that those are secondary issues when it comes to black hate crimes against us. We need federal protection. We don't need people to talk around the issue to try to get these emotional responses just to get our vote, just to do nothing again, right? So I think that's something that I just wanted to kind of put out there and focus on is look at it from a political perspective. Nobody really cares about the fact that 10 black people died, right? As far as the politicians, in my opinion, I don't think they really care. They haven't been caring all this time. And so why now? Why do they want to put this at the front headline of CNN every day? To do what? Because they're not trying to give us policy. They're not trying to give us protection. So you got to ask yourself, why do we see this on the news? Why are they even talking about it? And just really dig into that question.
Right, right. Well, a couple things that you said, man. First of all, I think that when you talk about Joe Biden and the Biden administration trying to keep garner more of the black vote, to me, and I know we talked about this in a previous video, but I don't think at the root of it, that either party really cares about the black vote per se, whether they have it or not. When you think about the system of voting and how the majority of people do not elect the president and how they often don't even elect congressional members, et cetera. I know we have a system set up to where they allegedly count the votes, but especially in the case of the presidency, when we're actually voting for delegates who can then cast the vote how they want. And I've always wondered, why do they care about sheer numbers of votes if in fact a Republican delegate can vote Democratic and vice versa? And I always thought about that. And I know we mentioned in a previous video that the voting mechanism and the system of voting is a way to keep people exercising the right to vote, which is a controlled exercise. It's like if, like say you're pissed off about something, or let's say people that are in prison, let's say you have some inmates and they've got a lot of energy and testosterone and they need to do something with it, right? So you don't want them to attempt to escape or to tear up the facility, right? What you rather them do is vent that potential in a different way. So when they exercise, what they're actually doing is they're venting, they're getting rid of an excess energy. And exercising, actually, when we talk about exercising the right to vote, I think is just one of those sorts of things to where Black people in particular, since we can exercise the right to vote, we can vent sort of that other energy that otherwise might be, forming a Black Panther Party or a Black political party or another Wall Street or, whatever. A lot of Black people prefer to exercise the right to vote because then they feel better. They get a release from it. And I think the powers that be, that is the two-party system, the alleged two-party system, they can keep people sort of on that treadmill of, voting. But it's a tricky thing because they have to put the bait out there and give them the facade of an incentive to vote. That is, in our case, it turns out to be a lot of rhetoric. Look at this. Oh, it's such a shame. It's a sad day. They shot the people. They shot Black people. This wouldn't have happened if it weren't for Trump. And it's sort of hyping up the boogeyman. And like you said, as if racism reared its ugly head in the form of Trump and hadn't been here previously. But again, it's the facade of having a reason to vote. And in our case, we don't even have a reason to vote. We have an anti-reason to vote. It's a negative.
Okay.
It's not saying this is what you'll get. It's saying this is what you won't get if you vote, i.e. the Republicans. If you vote, you won't get the Republicans. Well, what are we getting? Well, nothing. But you're not getting the Republicans, and that's your something. You know what I mean? And
Yep. And I
I
think
don't
my
imagine they'll
bad.
be able to do, I'm sorry, I don't imagine they'll be able to do that much longer, even for Black people as out of place as we are. My bad. Go ahead, bro.
No, definitely. No, I wanted you to finish that up. And I still agree with that as far as the whole voting, the illusion of voting. Definitely. However, they still want Black people to, in order to get that response, in order to make them feel good about themselves, they're still going to want their vote in that sense, regardless if the vote
Exactly.
counted or not, because then you're going to be more supportive. You're going to be more anti-Republican when it comes to, all the things that you vote for, just throughout, not just the presidency. So they still want that energy. They want the Black favor because what they don't like is, the political riots like the Fergusons and what happened in Minneapolis. Like when Black people kind of get out of control, as you see, like this nation goes downhill very quick. So it's still, as Black people, we still have a place in this country where they need to keep us, quote unquote, tamed, if that makes sense. Like they still need us to be cooperative, because if they lose our attention or our vote, or if we just say forget the country, it weakens the country more than they would like us to know. So it's
Facts.
still, they still want to keep us in that bubble to get that emotional response. We cast a vote thinking we doing something, and like I said, at the end of the day, you don't get anything. So, but they still want you in that mindset. So I totally still agree with what you said, just to put all that together.
No, yeah, that's part and parcel of it. They want to keep us on the treadmill. And like you said, there's a lot of devices that are in place to maintain that. We're told it's because our vote, quote unquote, counts. But what's so crazy to me is, man, it's like the general public can go with that narrative. But for example, when you had Bush versus what was it
Clinton
no,
or Kerry?
Gore, was it Gore? Al Gore. And Al
Oh, the
Gore
first
had
Bush.
500,000 more votes than Bush, but Bush won the presidency. And then they came out and explained it to the American people that you're actually voting for delegates, and then there's super delegates. And that was, holdover from the institution of slavery, to sort of give Southern states more of a say so in the political arena, allegedly, on the federal level. But how your vote, really, you're not voting directly for a president. You're voting for a delegate who then may or may not vote for the president.
Exactly. And I think people still don't understand that to this day. That's one of those things that you can say directly to a person, and because of the ignorance when it comes to just how this country is ran, people will look at you like you crazy. And it's like you can validate it, you can give them the documents, and people will still look at it like they'll say straight to you that they voting for the president. So I just think that's something that people just have to understand in general is how the vote even works if it was legit.
Right, facts. Or they'll hit you with the, and I don't think not even too many, even the old heads don't keep reciting this one that, our ancestors died for us to vote. But
Man,
I've been hit by that one before.
man. It's like out of all the things that our ancestors died for, why is that such an emphasis anyway? Even if that is what you want to run on, is like I'm pretty sure they died for our right not to vote too, because the right, the death was for the freedom to choose, right? Not
Right.
necessarily your right to vote, but it's like if you don't want to vote, they saying you have the right to not vote too, and you shouldn't be treated any differently, right? So even that spirit, but again, we could talk about them people or talk to those people for hours and they ain't gonna get it because they caught up in the lie. You know that one day we as a people is gonna be saved by somebody.
By voting.
So they want us to go cast that vote, even though it means absolutely nothing in real time.
And for all you people listening, I just want to go on the record like this, man. And I love my metaphors. But if your ancestors acquire something during their lifetime and they leave it to you, like say it's money, if your ancestors leave you $500,000, do they leave you that money so that then you have to spend it with a specific dealer? Like they leave you the money and say you can't do anything else, you can't spend it anywhere else except with that Toyota plant right there. Regardless of what they sell you, regardless of what they're offering, you cannot shop around with that money. Or do they say keep it, and if you don't find what you want, keep it in the bank until you find something worth buying, but don't waste it? Your ancestors would not want you to waste or splurge your inheritance. And if they did die for you to have the right to vote, you're supposed to spend the vote wisely. You don't go and spend it in the
Exactly.
same place, even if you're not getting anything of value for it. That's exactly the opposite of what your ancestors would want. Not to mention the Republican Party was the alleged party of the black people back then, but that's another thing.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I mean, again, we can go on with that forever because they died for our right to bear arms, but you'll still see those same people say we need to get the guns off the street and stricter gun control. But they want to use that your ancestors died so specifically to voting. So that's why I kind of throw it out the window. Like, man, we could
Facts.
argue all day what they died for, but at the end of the day, you want to vote for this party because you tap dancing for those people. Like, we don't believe in that system. I'm not gonna keep doing something that not beneficial. It just don't make sense, not logically.